हेलो स्टूडेंट्स एंड वेलकम बैक। आज हम कर रहे हैं पॉलिटिकल साइंस क्लास 12 का चैप्टर नंबर 1 द कोल्ड वॉर एरा। हम इसके अंदर मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चन भी करेंगे और इसके जो बुक के जो एनसीईआरटी के क्वेश्चंस हैं हम वो भी कवर करेंगे और एडिशनल शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस, शॉर्ट आंसर क्वेश्चंस और लॉन्ग आंसर क्वेश्चन जो है हम वो भी कवर करेंगे। ये मैं ऑन रिक्वेस्ट ऑफ वन ऑफ माई सब्सक्राइबर्स बना रहा हूँ, सो थैंक यू फॉर सजेस्टिंग। आई एक्चुअली मिस्ड द पॉलिटिकल साइंस बट आई विल बी कंटिन्यूइंग। सो ये कुछ पार्ट्स में बनेगा। आई विल इंश्योर कि ये 20-25 मिनट से ज़्यादा का वीडियो ना बने, जिससे कि आप लोगों के लिए ईजी रहे वीडियो देखना और उसको ग्रास्प करना। सो हम शुरू करते हैं चैप्टर 1 द कोल्ड वॉर एरा। हम MCQ करेंगे और साथ साथ उससे रिलेटेड जो भी टेक्स्ट बुक में क्वेश्चंस ये आएंगे हम वो करेंगे। लेट्स क्विकली बिगिन। So students, the first question is the Western Alliance was headed by Balkan countries, the United States, the Soviet Union और Brazil। और इसका students आंसर है the Western Alliance was headed by the United States। स्टूडेंट्स हम बुक को भी रेफर करते हैं। आप देखिए बुक में लिखा हुआ है the Western Alliance headed by the US represented the ideology of liberal democracy and capitalism, while the Eastern Alliance, which was headed by the Soviet Union, was committed to the ideology of socialism and communism। तो आपके पास क्वेश्चन आ सकता है कि वेस्टर्न अलायंस कौन हेड करता था। आपको आंसर मिल गया है यूएस, और उनकी आइडियोलॉजी क्या थी? लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी एंड कैपिटलिज्म। और ईस्टर्न अलायंस हेड करता था सोवियत यूनियन और उसकी आइडियोलॉजी थी सोशलिज्म एंड कम्युनिज्म। नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन स्टूडेंट्स, when did USSR placed nuclear missiles in Cuba? क्यूबा में USSR ने न्यूक्लियर मिसाइल्स कब कर रखी थी? 1962, 61, 60 और 63। एंड स्टूडेंट्स इसका आंसर है 1962। हम बुक को भी रेफर करते हैं। आप देखेंगे स्टूडेंट्स आपकी बुक में ये लिखा हुआ है। So here Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, decided to convert Cuba into a Russian base. In 1962, he placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. The installation of these weapons put the US for the first time under fire from close range and nearly doubled the number of bases or cities in the American mainland, which could be threatened by USSR. तो हमें आंसर मिल गया है 1962 में, और कौन था लीडर? निकिता खुरुशेव। नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पे चलते हैं। कोरिया वॉज अ कॉलोनी ऑफ ब्रिटेन, जापान, USA और पोलैंड। आई थिंक तो आपको बड़ा इजी लग रहा होगा। कोरिया वॉज अ कॉलोनी ऑफ जापान। विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग स्टेटमेंट्स अबाउट द NIEO इज फॉल्स? प्रोवाइड द डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज विद अ ग्रेटर रोल इन इंटरनेशनल इकोनॉमिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस, गिव द LDCs कंट्रोल ओवर देयर नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज, ऑब्टेन एक्सेस टू वेस्टर्न मार्केट्स, reduce the cost of technology from the western countries। so students, मुझे इसका आंसर मालूम है। इसमें जो ये फर्स्ट ऑप्शन है provide the developed countries with a greater role of international economic institution, ये गलत है। the NIEO was supposed to give the LDC a greater role। तो हम इसके बारे में और थोड़ा पढ़ते हैं। So this is the NIEO, New International Economic Order, आपके जो चैप्टर में है। So the non-aligned countries were more than merely mediators during the Cold War. The challenge for most of the non-aligned countries, a majority of them were categorized as the least developed countries. तो LDC का full form है least developed countries. And the aim was to be more developed economically and lift their people out of poverty. Economic development was also vital for the independence of the new countries, and without sustained development, a country could not be truly free. It would remain dependent on the richer countries, including the colonial powers, from which political freedom had been achieved. So ये सब reason है why it was formed. The idea of New International Economic Order. So the full form of NIEO is New International Economic Order, originated with the realization कि डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज और लीस्ट डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज उनकी डेवलपमेंट होनी ज़रूरी है, उनको एट पार आना ज़रूरी है। So the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, brought out a report in 1972 entitled Towards a New Trade Policy for Development. And इनके क्या proposal थे? So they have these main proposals. Give the LDC यानी कि least developed countries control over their natural resources, कि वो अपने natural resources को control कर सकें क्योंकि developed countries या western countries exploit कर रही थी. Obtain access to western markets so that least developed countries could sell their products and therefore make trade more beneficial. Reduce the cost of technology from the western countries and provide the LDC with a greater role in international economic institutions. तो यहाँ पे ये वाला जो है हमारे उसमें ऑप्शन गलत लिखा हुआ है. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पे चलते हैं. What is the full form of CENTO? The Central Team Organization, the Central Treaty Organization, the Central Tally Organization और the Central Task Organization. तो स्टूडेंट्स आई थिंक ये तो आपको बड़ा इजी होगा, याद होगा. CENTO means the Central Treaty Organization. अब देखेंगे बुक में it is mentioned. CEATO is the South Asian Treaty Organization and the Central Treaty Organization is CENTO. ये आपके इस चैप्टर में आपको दिखेगा. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पे चलते हैं. Which organization came into existence in April 1949? NATO, Warsaw Pact, CEATO और CENTO. तो हमें पता है, हमने अभी पढ़ा था. CEATO is South East Asian Treaty, CENTO is हमने भी पढ़ा था. जो अप्रैल 1949 में ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एग्जिस्टेंस में आई थी वो थी NATO. तो इसका ही हम पढ़ते हैं. So, देखेंगे, the Western Alliance was formalized into organization. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO, which came into existence in April 1949. It was an association of 12 states which declared that armed attack on any one of them in Europe or North America would be regarded as an attack on all of them. तो ये NATO यानी कि North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Which of the following countries was not a NATO member? The Czech Republic, France, Germany or India? Students, very easy answer for this. India was never a NATO member. The event that took place in 1961 was the unification of Germany, the construction of the Berlin Wall, Soviet intervention in Afghanistan or Vietnamese intervention in Cambodia. And students, answer for this is the event that took place in 1961 was the construction of Berlin Wall. आपकी चैप्टर में there's a timeline, ज़रा इसको ध्यान से पढ़ लेना क्योंकि कुछ भी आ सकता है. This is called as the Cold War timeline. यहाँ पे आप देखेंगे 1961 US sponsored Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba and the construction of the Berlin Wall. 1962 में क्यूबन मिसाइल क्राइसिस हुआ. 65 में, 68 में, 72 में, ये सब आपको यहाँ पे मिलेगा. What is the full form of CEATO? Southeast Asian Team Organization, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, Southeast Asian Tally Organization और Southeast Asian Task Organization. तो हमने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले देखा था, बुक में रेफर करके पढ़ा था. CEATO means Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. Which among the following statements does not reflect the objectives of NAM? Enabling newly decolonized countries to pursue independent policies, focus on elimination of global economic inequalities, following a policy of neutrality on global issues, or not to joining any military alliances. तो इनमें से कौन सी ऐसी स्टेटमेंट है जो NAM के ऑब्जेक्टिव को रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं करती है? सो स्टूडेंट्स, इन सब में से जो ऑब्जेक्टिव है जो NAM का नहीं था वो था फॉलोइंग ऑफ अ पॉलिसी ऑफ न्यूट्रलिटी ऑन ग्लोबल इशूज़, यानी कि ग्लोबल इशूज़ में कुछ भी हो रहा हो तो वो कोई वो पक्ष ना ले. तो दैट वाज नॉट द ऑब्जेक्टिव. Which among the following statements about the Cold War is wrong? इनमें से कौन सी स्टेटमेंट ऐसी है जो कि कोल्ड वॉर के रिलेटेड गलत है? It triggered off an arms race. बिल्कुल ठीक है, कोल्ड वॉर से आर्म्स रेस की शुरुआत हुई थी. It was an ideological war between the superpowers. Kind of, yes, it was an ideological war. It was a competition between the US and Soviet Union and their respective allies. ये भी बिल्कुल ठीक है. The US and USSR were engaged in direct wars. बिल्कुल नहीं. कोल्ड वॉर में there was no direct engagement of war, so this is not the correct one. The island country that received both diplomatic and financial aid from the Soviet Union was Sri Lanka, Norway, Japan or Cuba. And students, answer for this is very easy, सबको पता होगा. It is Cuba, the island country which received both diplomatic and financial aid from Soviet Union. The rivalry between the USA and USSR during the post-Second World War period is known as Cold War, Apartheid, Hot War, Policy of Non-Alignment. Again a very easy one. It is known as Cold War. The person that opposed neo-colonialism was Churchill, Khrushchev, Brezhnev या क्वामे नक्रुमा. स्टूडेंट्स, इसका सही जवाब है क्वामे नक्रुमा. अब बुक में रेफर करेंगे, आप देखेंगे यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है फाउंडर फिगर्स ऑफ NAM, नॉन अलाइन्ड मूवमेंट. क्वामे नक्रुमा 1909 to 1972, first Prime Minister of Ghana from 1952 to 1966, led the freedom movement, advocated the causes of socialism and African unity, opposed neo-colonialism, removed in a military coup. The Warsaw Pact was led by the Soviet Union, Italy, Japan or Britain. I think बड़ा easy है. It is the Soviet Union. बुक में रेफर करते हैं. So if you see here, the Eastern Alliance, which was known as the Warsaw Pact, was led by the Soviet Union and it was created in 1955, and its principal function was to counter NATO's forces in Europe. तो मेन एम इनका ये था वॉर्सो पैक्ट का कि जो नेटो के फोर्सेस हैं यूरोप में उसको काउंटर करना. After the Second World War, the world was divided into the blocks of Japan and Korea, USA and USSR, USSR and China, USA and UK. तो बड़ा इजी है, हमें पता है. It was divided into the blocks of USA and USSR. Which of the following was not a member of SEATO? Pakistan, USSR, New Zealand or Australia? So students, SEATO के members जो थे वो सारे थे except USSR. USSR was not member of SEATO. Which two ideologies were involved in a conflict during the Cold War era? Communism and capitalism, communalism and capitalism, monarchism and capitalism, or none of the above? So students, basically इसमें आप ध्यान रखना, ये communism और communalism ये दो अलग वर्ड हैं. इसका सही जवाब है communism and capitalism. आप बुक भी रेफर करेंगे. The Western Alliance headed by the US represented the ideology of liberal democracy and capitalism, while Eastern Alliance headed by the Soviet Union was committed to the ideology of socialism and communism. So communism is the answer. Which one of the following is an agreement signed between the two superpowers starting in the 1960s? Warsaw Pact, Limited Test Ban Treaty, Moscow Agreement or Berlin Pact? Students, answer for this is Limited Test Ban Treaty. And students, this brings to the last question which I have prepared in MCQ. After this, some more MCQs are there and some short answer and long answer. We will continue with that. In which country are the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki located? Italy, China, Japan and France. Very easy. They are located in Japan. And students, ये जो टेक्स्ट बुक में क्वेश्चंस हैं ये we have already covered in our MCQ. हम रिपीट करते हैं. Which among the following statements about the Cold War is wrong? It was a competition between the US and Soviet Union and their respective allies. बिल्कुल सही बात है. It was an ideological war between the superpowers. ये भी बिल्कुल ठीक है. It triggered off an arms race. ये भी बिल्कुल ठीक है. The USSR and USSR were engaged in direct wars. ये गलत है. तो इसमें आपको D select करना है. Next question है, which among the following statements does not reflect the objectives of NAM, enabling newly decolonized countries to pursue independent policies? करते हैं. Not to joining any military alliances, following a policy of neutrality on global issues, or focus on elimination of global economic inequalities. तो इसमें हमने किया था MCQ में, it is following a policy of neutrality in global issues is not the objective of NAM. Mark correct or wrong against each of the following statements that describe the features of the military alliances formed by the superpowers. Member countries of the alliance are to provide bases in their respective lands for the superpowers. So students, ये बिल्कुल ठीक है, जो member countries होती हैं alliance की, उनको अपने यहाँ बेस देना होता है सुपर पावर के. So this is true. Member countries to support the superpower both in terms of ideology and military strategy. This is also true. When a nation attacks any member country, it is considered as an attack to all member countries. This is also true. Superpowers assist all the member countries to develop their own nuclear weapons. This is not true. So true, 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 and this is false. Here is a list of countries right against each of these the bloc they belonged to during the Cold War. So students, Poland was Warsaw Pact. France was NATO. Japan was again NATO. Nigeria was NAM. North Korea was Warsaw Pact. Sri Lanka was again NAM. The Cold War produced an arms race as well as arms control. What were the reasons for both of these developments? So students, इसका आंसर है the Cold War produced an arms race as well as an arms control because Cuban Missile Crisis engaged both of them, superpowers, in the development of nuclear weapons to influence the world. आपको पता होगा, US dropped nuclear bombs in the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki with the intention to stop Soviet Union from making military and political gains in Asia. Both the powers were not ready to initiate a war because they knew that destruction from these will not justify any gain for them. Both the powers were to be rational and responsible, being restrained and avoiding risk of another. Hence, both the superpowers decided to limiting certain kinds of nuclear and non-nuclear weapons by signing various significant agreements within a decade, that is Limited Test Ban Treaty, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, etc. Why did the superpowers have military alliances with smaller countries? Give 3 reasons. Superpowers had military alliances with smaller states who were helpful for them in gaining access to vital resources as oil and minerals, territory from where the superpowers could launch their weapons and troops, locations from where they could spy on each other, and economic support to pay their military expenses. These are the 4 reasons. आपको 3 reasons देने हैं, आप कोई भी इनमें से 3 दे सकते हैं. So students, we have covered your textbook questions. कुछ और additional short answer and long answer मैंने बनाए हैं. Let's look at them also. Students, कुछ हम फिर से short question या MCQ type करते हैं. Name the countries constituting the Allied powers during World War II. Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Croatia. Great Britain, Soviet Union, France, United States and China. Germany, Italy, Japan and Australia. Slovak Republic, Bulgaria, Germany and Japan. सही इसका जवाब है Great Britain, Soviet Union, France, United States and China. Name the leader who played a crucial role in de-escalating tensions between the two Koreas during the Cold War. Jawaharlal Nehru, India. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana. Sukarno, Indonesia. Gamal Abdel Nasser, Egypt. And students, answer for this is, you can remember this very easily. It was a Jawaharlal Nehru from India who played a crucial role in de-escalating tensions between the two Koreas during the Cold War. And this brings to the last question for us today. What is logic of deterrence? Students, the logic of deterrence is when two rival powers are in possession of nuclear weapons capable of inflicting death and destruction unacceptable to each other, a full-fledged war is unlikely. In spite of provocations, neither side would want to risk wars since no political gains would justify the destruction of their societies. This is known as the logic of deterrence. Both sides have the capacity to retaliate against an attack and to cause so much destruction that neither can afford to initiate war. एक तरीके से दोनों जो कंट्रीज होती हैं वो आपस में लड़ाई या न्यूक्लियर वॉर इसलिए नहीं करती, उनको क्योंकि पता है कि अगर उन्होंने इनिशिएट किया तो जो दूसरी कंट्री है वो भी न्यूक्लियर केपेबल है और वो उनको तबाह कर देगी. सो दोनों इतने पावरफुल हैं, सो दे विल नेवर फाइट अगेंस्ट ईच अदर, एंड दिस इज नोन एज द लॉजिक ऑफ deterrence. So we have one more question. Is non-aligned movement or NAM isolation or neutrality? Your views. Answer for the students is non-aligned movement is not isolationism, since isolation means remaining aloof from world affairs. The non-aligned countries over the years have played crucial role in mediating between the two rival alliances in the cause of peace and stability. Their strength was based on their unity and their resolve to remain non-aligned despite the attempt by two superpowers to bring them into their alliances during the Cold War days. Non-alignment cannot be referred as neutrality. Neutrality refers principally to a policy of staying out of war. States practicing neutrality are not required to help end a war. They do not get involved in wars and do not take any position on the appropriateness or morality of a war. However, non-aligned states, including India, were actually involved in wars for various reasons. They also worked to prevent war between others and tried to end wars that had broken out. So students, this brings to the end of the question answers, multiple choice question answers, शॉर्ट आंसर्स एंड लॉन्ग आंसर. हम एक बार इसको समरी दोबारा कर लेते हैं, जैसे कि कुछ टॉपिक अगर रह गया होगा तो यू विल बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड. सो इन दिस इफ यू सी द टॉपिक्स विच वी कैन कवर इज द कोल्ड वॉर, background and definition, emergence of two power blocks or bipolarity, arenas of Cold War and non-aligned movement. So students, World War II happened between 1939 to 1945. Allied powers were US, UK, USSR and France. They won the World War II. Axis power were Germany, Italy and Japan, which lost the World War II. You can see these two pictures I've taken from the media. These two pictures symbolize the victory of US and USSR in the World War II, and end of World War II began a Cold War between US and USSR. The World War II ends when US drops two atomic bombs on Hiroshima 6th August and Nagasaki 9th August in Japan. So critics of the US decision to drop the bombs have argued that the US knew that Japan was about to surrender and that it was unnecessary to drop the bombs. They suggest that the US action was intended to stop the Soviet Union from making military and political gains in Asia and elsewhere, and to show Moscow that the United States was supreme. तो इसका ये मतलब है कि जो वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 जब ख़त्म हुई थी, यूएस ने एटॉमिक बॉम्ब जब गिराए थे, लोगों का कहना है कि यूएस का डिसीजन जो था वो गलत था क्योंकि जापान सरेंडर करने वाला था. बट यूएस का जो एक्शन था वो इसलिए था कि वो सोवियत यूनियन को स्टॉप करना चाहता था कोई भी मिलिट्री और पॉलिटिकल गेन से. These are the pictures. The atomic bomb, Germany surrenders, Japanese surrender, World War II ends. After the World War II, the Cold War started. The Cold War referred the competition, the tensions and a series of confrontations between United States and Soviet Union backed by their respective allies. आपको definition में मिल जाएगी. The competition that developed between US and the Soviet Union for power and influence in the world between 1945 and 1991. So that there were two power blocks. NATO led by United States formed in April 1949. Warsaw Pact led by Soviet Union formed in 1955. ये जो येलो में है, these are NATO members. रेड में जो है Warsaw Pact members, और ग्रीन में अदर कम्युनिस्ट नेशंस, और ग्रे में बाकी लेफ्ट कंट्रीज. These are all map. First world, second world and third world. India is part of the third world. Africa, South America, these are all third world countries. Deterrence का question हमने किया था. The logic of deterrence means both sides have the capacity to retaliate against an attack and to cause so much destruction that neither can afford to initiate war. यानी कि आप देखिए दोनों कंट्रीज के पास इतने न्यूक्लियर पावर है, अगर ये अटैक करेगा तो ये भी करेगा, सो दे कांट अफोर्ड कि दूसरी कंट्री से वो लड़े और रिटेलिएट हो जाए. Cuban Missile Crisis. So the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. Cuba was an ally of the Soviet Union and received both diplomatic and financial aid from it. Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, decided to convert Cuba into a Russian base. उसने वहाँ पे हमने MCQ में किया था कि they placed nuclear missiles there. In 1962, he placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. The installation of these weapons put the US under threat. 3 weeks after the Soviet Union had placed the nuclear weapons in Cuba, the Americans became aware of it, and US U-2 spy plane flights over the Cuban territory revealed the missile installation sites. So this was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuban Prime Minister Fidel Castro shakes hands with Soviet Prime Minister Nikita Khrushchev in 1961. ये क्वेश्चन हमने कर लिया है कि why did superpowers need to make allies with smaller countries? रिसोर्सेज यूज करते थे, टेरिटरी यूज करते थे, लोकेशन यूज करते थे और इकोनॉमिक सपोर्ट यूज करते थे. और सुपर पावर्स को क्यों लेते थे स्मॉलर कंट्रीज? बिकॉज दे गॉट द प्रॉमिस ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन, वेपन्स एंड इकोनॉमिक एड. So students, this is all about this chapter. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. If you have, do subscribe, like and share my channel. That will keep me motivated, and I will post all the other chapters of the political science very soon.